Hi and welcome to Section 3, Building a Serverless Application. In this section, we are going to build a web application with a combination of different technologies. We are going to use again the serverless framework with Lambda and API Gateway, but we are also going to use a couple of other AWS services. In particular, we are going to use DynamoDB for persisting our data, we are going to use Cognito for identifying users, and we are going to use S3 and CloudFront for deploying our front end. Now let's get started with the first video in Section 3, in which we are going to build a stateless backend for our serverless web application. In this video, we are going to build a stateless web application backend, but don't worry, we'll add a database later. The application will allow users to create, read, update and delete blog articles. Then we will deploy and test our little blog API. I have opened the Atom text editor in my empty directory blog app. Now let's use the command line to create some files. I use SLS create to create a new service using the same template as before, but now I'll give it another name. How about blog? This generates the two files, serverless YAML and handler.js. I open the serverless YAML first and delete some of the comments. So the first thing that I want to do is change the region, because I want to deploy my service in the Frankfurt region in EU Central 1. Alright. Let's scroll down a little bit to the function. The next thing that I want to do is rename my Lambda function from hello to maybe something like create article. And I also want to rename the module that gets exported in my handler.js file. I'll rename it also to create article. Now since I renamed the module that the Lambda function references here as a handler function, I also need to rename it in my handler.js file. So replace hello with create article. Last but not least, let's go back to the serverless YAML file and add our API gateway. I delete these comments here. Oh, that is one too much. So what I want to change is the path and the method. The path, for consistency reasons, let's also name it create article. And the method shouldn't probably be a get method, but rather a post. Now let's deploy our service by typing SLS deploy. Okay, our service has been deployed. So the next thing that I want to do is invoke my Lambda function and see if it works. And I get back the message from our auto-generated code. That looks fine. Next, let's use Postman to check if the API also works. For that purpose, we'll need the endpoint, which is given here. So copy that and open Postman. Now I enter the request URL up here. And since I deployed a post method, I also need to switch it here from get to post and click send. Oh, and here's a typo because there was a line break. Go serverless. Now, I'm not super happy with the file structure yet, so let's go back to the editor and change it a bit. I'm back in my blog app directory, And the first thing to restructure my code a little bit is I will create a subdirectory named articles. And in this article subdirectory, I want to move all the Lambda function handlers that are related to articles. So right now I have my create articles function in the handler.js file. However, so there are different ways in which you can structure your Lambda function handlers and how many Lambda functions you want to deploy per service. I like to have one Lambda function per method. So let's rename it to create, thereby reflecting what the Lambda function actually does. And I'm also going to rename the handler from create article to handler. Now we need to update our serverless YAML file. Let's scroll down to the functions. The function handler name, the function name still is create article, but the path of our function handler has changed. So now it's in the article subdirectory, and the file name is create. And the function that I export is not anymore create article, but handler. So again, depends a little bit, maybe you have a different style, but I like it this way. My Lambda function is named create article, and the function handler is my article subdirectory. The file is named create, and this is a function handler, so why not name it handler? Now let's remove the dummy code from our function handler and replace it with something else. The first thing that I want to do is parse my event object. And since it is an HTTP event, it should have a body property. I'll save the body property in a constant named data. And I assume that it has a certain structure, that my data object has a text property of type string. I might also check this. And if that doesn't work, then, or if the validation fails, then I will log an error on the console and I will send an error in my callback message back. Next, for debugging purposes, I will log out what the text property is on my console, and I will prepare a response message for my callback, which has a status code of 200, OK, and sends back a message created article. Then I will invoke my callback with the response. Let's deploy our service and try it out. Okay, the service has been deployed, so I'll head back to Postman to test the API. I will again send a post request, but this time with a body. So it should be JSON encoded and contains text, hello world. And now I click on send. And voila, it says created article. Let's go back to the terminal and check the logs. To check the logs, we type in SLS, logs, and our function name, create article. And we can see in the logs that it says hello world. So the string that I sent in my post body. Alright, let's create some more function stubs. First I will create or specify the functions here that I want to have. So I want to create an API for reading articles, for updating articles, and for deleting articles. So I also need to create the files. Let's go back to the create.js file, copy and paste the code, paste it into the read.js file. I'll delete the part up here and I'll simply create a stub for now. Because we can't save data yet, it doesn't really make sense to do anything else here. So this is the read article. Let's copy again, go to the update, fill it in here, and delete. Also save the serverless YAML file. Alright, let's deploy our service. Okay, our service has been deployed. We have now 4 functions and 4 endpoints. Let's take a quick look at the AWS Management Console. Alright, the Management Console shows our API and it looks like there's still a little inconsistency. Let's fix that. I'm back in my editor and let's remove the path create article and also name it articles. I forgot that. Let's redeploy our service. And now let's check the AWS Management Console. And now it looks very nice. We have a delete, get, post, and put method. And if I click on the method, it also shows the API integration with our Lambda function. Pretty nice. In the next video, we are going to add DynamoDB to our backend to make it a stateful serverless application. In our next video, we are going to add DynamoDB to our backend and make it a stateful serverless application. See you there.